Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. We're going to get a little deep today with good reason, because this could reveal the secret to your success, the secret of life. It could reveal what's been holding you back and haven't really gone in the direction that you should go in. And a lot of times we are faced with that fork in the road, not really sure which one to take. So we're going to dig into that. Lots to be discovered here today with somebody who's an internationally known animal communicator and clairvoyant. And she does those readings on both animals and people, crosses the veil as well to the other side. And she's got a book out. She does a lot, let me tell you. But she's got a book out that's fantastic called Which Path Leads to Forever. I do know one thing. The path we're going to take now is to introduce her in here once again. She is Shirley Scott. Shirley, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. How are you doing?
Real good, real good. And I'm intrigued about this particular book, and it's one of quite a few you have. You also have CDs. You have tools to help people navigate some of those challenges in life like fear. Tell us overall what we get from this book.
That book talks about a woman, and it's based on my experience of a near-death, out-of-body experience, and what is actually on the other side that we talk about when we cross the veil. You know, a lot of people have almost died and, had no experiences, and then some of us who have almost died have had these great experiences of being out of body. And, I got to watch the paramedics work on me, and I got to be in the white cloud. And, a lot of people ask me about death. And through that experience, I know that there is something besides our physical body, and it does continue. And the book is about a woman that gets to go to the other side, and she gets to go back sort of in time and see where she was in her fears and what has held her back. And she gets to experience walking with a man named Pop, who is actually a representative of God. And she gets to go through this whole landscape of climbing hills that are tough and hard, and yet when she gets to the top, the other side, there's a really cool path to walk. And so she gets to walk all these paths, and she gets to choose when she wants to get off a path. And, sometimes this Pop is with her, and sometimes he's not. But he always says he's there. But it's about free will, fears, and choices that everybody needs to make in their life. And, I kind of wrote it from, when I write books, I channel in whatever comes through. And it's more about teaching people that free will and fear are the two greatest things in their life. And that can hold you back, both of them. But it also talks about how we can let fear go so that we can move forward in our life. I always tell people, a lot of people won't go to the doctor when they have headaches because they, might be afraid they have a brain tumor. But then they get to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, let me adjust your neck a little bit," and then it's fine. But most of us do not move forward because we have the fear of the unknown. When you're in pain about something, you stay in it because you know it. Oh, it's pain. It's the same old thing, same old day, but you know it. And most people will not move out of their fear because they don't know what's coming next. And that's sad because most of the time it's something good.
It's lots to talk about here. Free will, I believe, is everything. We forget that we have that. It's pretty much everything.
It's everything. People say to me, well, what's God's plan for me? Well, God's plan is to come to earth and learn. Because if he actually had a plan for you that was set in stone, why would he give us free will?
You know?
It would not make sense because he wants us to come down here and do what we do. And then when we cross over, we have learned so much. However, on the other side, we still learn. We still grow. We still travel. We don't just, I tell people, you don't die and then sit on a cloud playing a harp the rest of eternity. You know, that's not the way it is on the other side. And me walking the path on the other side, I know that. You know, I'm not afraid of death, and I'm not afraid of change. I have very few fears in my life. If something comes, I look at it and go, okay, let's look at what fear comes up that would hold me back. And I learned to walk through fear with love, because you can't have two emotions at the same time. You can have them nanoseconds apart, but you can't live in fear and love at the same time. It's impossible. So
this is hard to process. Got to think about that. You can't live in fear and love at the same time.
Mm-mm.
All right. So love is said to be the highest vibration. It's where you want to be.
That's right. Yes.
Is fear the lowest vibration?
It can be. Yes. It can be. It depends upon how much fear you're in. There are degrees of fear. And it's okay to have a little bit of fear, you know, like, well, I don't want to, you know, walk off the cliff, you know. I mean, that's a good fear to have because, you know, you're going to die. So, but in a spiritual sense, walking off a cliff sometimes is the best thing you can do to say, now I'm going to get my angel wings and I'm going to fly. You know, I bring up the point again where in COVID, even after 9/11, when we have these big issues that come up that are, you know, just overwhelming, people change their thought system of, what do I really want to do? I'm not happy here, or this isn't working for me. And many people, you know, will take a jump into a completely different lifestyle or a job, and you hear people say, well, that's stupid, what are you doing, you know? And they jump into it, and they're happier, and they succeed, and because now they're on the path that they're supposed to be on. Our paths change as we grow.
Interesting. We're having this conversation because I had a conversation with somebody that I've partnered with, known him for decades, on a venture. We'll call it that. And he said, and I mean today, he said this time a week ago, we had hired somebody to work with us, and it seemed like a great thing. It was like fantastic. In short time, revealed that this person's not going to work out. And, you know, that ended in a week. And then my friend said that he said, I just threw my hands up to the sky and said, please make this easy. This should not be so hard. Can you please help us out here? Less than 1 hour away, somebody came basically walking through the door by way of email. And now it's somebody that looks like they're the perfect person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my takeaway on that was having faith, and also you need to move things around in order for things like a puzzle. You know, the things aren't going to fit exactly unless you take this out so that can move in.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And here's the other thing about that situation you just said. If you and your partner would have sat there in fear and said, no, we got to make this person work. I know it's going to be uncomfortable, la, 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 la. You guys would have done the wrong thing, and it would have gotten worse and worse. Instead, you recognized it and said, you know, I don't know what we're going to do, but this isn't going to work. You know, the universe gives us things that I tell people, if you're moving forward with something and it's going smooth, then go with it. But if you keep hitting your head and things aren't going right and they're falling apart, and you need to step back, and there's a couple of questions you need to ask yourself. First of all, am I supposed to be doing this? Mm-hmm. Secondly, am I doing it in the right way? Do I need to do it in a different way? And thirdly, is the timing right?
Yeah, that's the other. That's the sticky part there, the timing part, because we want it on our time, and that's not really the way it works.
That's not the way it works. It's not. And we also know that, you know, people right today, you know, it's instant gratification. Let's go. Let's get a pill for everything. I want it right now. But in the universal time, it's like take each step, because if you miss a step, you're going to get knocked back down again.
Which is, you get back up again. There was a song that came out called Tub Thumping, back 20-something years ago, and it basically says, I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Yep.
And that's, I guess that's a lesson to be learned. How do you get out of, many of us are in the victim mode. When something happens, it's like, oh, wow, why did that happen? How can we get out of that mode?
Well, that's cool, because I could be a victim in a lot of things, but I sit down and I look at it and go, instead of saying victim, I go, that was really uncomfortable. What did I learn from it? I have to learn something. I don't believe that humans really make mistakes. They learn lessons, okay? And if we can start looking at every bad situation, what did I learn from that? Where will I go from here? And know that you cannot let a bad situation own you. You have to move through it. And, I know there's some horrific things that happen out there, and people go, well, what the hell? What was I supposed to learn from that? And there's always something to learn from it, whether, you're not supposed to walk down a dark alley by yourself, whether, somebody breaks into your house and, maybe there's something there that you could have done to prevent it. There's something always there to learn. There's also lessons to interact with each other on when horrific things happen. So I sit down and I go, I'm not going to let this own me. I'm not going to let this define my life. I'm going to walk through this with love for myself. You don't have to love everybody, but for yourself. And then I'm going to see what I learned from it, and I'm going to move forward with what can I do to make it better. Can I help other people not go through the situation I did? Can I, educate people in somehow on what happened? There's always something that you can do to turn that situation around to, quote unquote, make it better that it happened.
So I might have shared this mantra with you that I've adopted in the past, in my journey, which has been ongoing in a major different way in the last 4 or 5 years. And sort of in the beginning, and then I didn't, this is not my quote, but I've tweaked it a little bit. Some say it's from Shakespeare, some say it's from Bob Marley. Love everyone, trust few, that was my lesson, one of many, and always do the right thing for all, meaning not just for yourself, because we can all say, well, I did the right thing, but that benefit just you, and that could be just one-sided, for the greater good, for all. And when I say love everyone, and this inspired it, because you said you can't love everybody. I get what you're saying. What I mean by that is, you walk into a coffee shop, and the coffee's great. Well, show the love. Say, thank you for making this today. This really came out good. And if you're feeling it, if you're feeling it and it's genuine, you might look at that person and their hair just, it fits them. You might want to say, your hair looks great today. I totally fits your face. Just, have a great day. And that's it. You showed a little bit of love. And even those who do you wrong, I know it's not easy, to show them some kind of, love and light, if you will. But that's how I pilot, and it seems to kind of fit into place. But the trust, used to trust everyone. So I had to change that to trust few. I know it can be a negative. love your thoughts on that, too.
No. Okay. I love that saying, because you love everyone, but you don't have to have them in your life. Okay?
Correct.
You can love them from a distance, and you can say, okay. And trust no one is true.
Trust few.
Trust few. Because in the human DNA, it's built in to lie. I don't know why, but it is. And It's not if somebody's going to lie to you, but when and how big. Everybody lies. Everybody, no matter what. And it's a thing that you have to train yourself out of. Because, and when I started the spiritual journey, I had a teacher, and she said, are you sure you want to start this path of spirituality? And I said, yeah. And I said, why? And she said, because from this point on, you have to take responsibility for everything you say, think, and do. And she said, if you don't, you can't do it. And that was a huge lesson for me. So, and I learned not to trust many people. I learned that the same way you did. And you really have to have a very close relationship with somebody so that they can tell you the truth and feel safe. People lie because they don't feel safe.
That's a pinnacle statement right there, and one to think about. People lie because they don't feel safe. Now, I try to apply that to people who have not been honest in my world, over years. I'm going to have to sit with that one for a while, Shirley.
Yeah, they don't feel safe in some way. So they have to lie about a situation either to get out of it or not have the spotlight on them or to blame on somebody else, something. So
okay, let me ask this question.
Okay.
What about if they're dishonest and or deceitful? So they may not have, let's say, I don't know, hypothetically, somebody cheated, right? Cheated on the other person, and you didn't come out and say, "Are you cheating?" But they are being deceitful and they are being dishonest. But they didn't outwardly say, if you said, "Where were you last night?" "Oh, I was home," and maybe they weren't. Is that the same thing as lying?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they're not telling the truth.
They're not telling the truth. Yeah.
The truth is the truth. I mean, that's just it. The truth is the truth. Were you home last night? And they go, yeah, and they weren't. That's no matter where they were. That's a lie. So, people do that all the time. And a lot of them don't even think about it.
I had this conversation with my son last night over a situation. And I said, son, I've changed the way I look at things. I try to take emotion out of it. The facts are the facts. The truth is the truth. That's, you can't change the truth if it truly is the truth. Just had that conversation. And I believe that, Yeah. Facts don't lie. People.
Facts don't lie. You don't have to remember what you say if you tell the truth either, because it's always going to be the truth.
Right. Facts don't lie. People do.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and look at our court system now, too. Look at how DNA has changed that. DNA doesn't lie.
I want to ask, in your book, Which Path Leads to Forever? Mm-hmm. You had a near-death experience.
Yes.
How did that change your life?
It changed it forever. I was starting a spiritual path. I had gone to my first retreat where I had started seeing auras around people's heads, and I had some amazing experiences with the universe it was amazing, everything that happened to me on that retreat. And then when I had the near-death out-of-body experience and experienced the other side, and them sending me back into my body after watching the paramedics, working on it, and just before they used the chest paddles on me, I woke up and went, there is more to life than this life, and I need to change my way of eating, my way of thinking, it changed everything. It was immensely, it changed everything about me. And it put me on this rocket of learning and studying and growing and becoming who I am today, where, I have a completely different outlook on life, as a lot of people do, from a lot of people. And every way it changed my life, for every way.
Did you have a new appreciation for life in general?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also stopped judging people.
Do we judge people because of our ego?
We do. Or we think they're wrong because of our belief system. But when they're on their path, this is part of the book, nobody knows what everybody's path is supposed to be. No psychic even knows that. Nobody knows what that path is completely 100%. And somebody can be walking almost the same path with you, right beside you, doing the same things. And their experience of life is going to be completely different than yours, and they are going to get completely different effects or issues than you are, even if you're on the same path, because that same path is going to be different for everybody. It's never the same for anybody. And we can't judge people on their path because we don't know why they're walking it.
Yeah, it goes back to the old adage, you can't walk a mile in somebody's shoes. You're not them.
Exactly. You know, when I was training dogs in prison, you know, the Dogs in Prison program, what I started in Walla Walla, Washington, you work with a lot of nasty people. I mean, you do. But I didn't judge them on what they had done to get there. I looked at what they were doing with the animals and what they were learning working with those dogs. And their path was completely different than mine. And, you know, I don't agree with murder or any robbery or anything like that. But I couldn't judge them because, you know, most of them were living their karma, you know, being locked up. But I looked at them as what they were doing right there in the moment.
And it's funny how what they're doing is what you were doing. You equalized in that particular regard.
Exactly. And yet, you know, here are these men that are learning to become dog trainers in prison, and they love it. And, you know, a lot of them went off antidepressants and medication and everything. But and in that one moment, we were kind of on the same path. And then the minute I leave, they go back to their path, and I go back to mine. So you can intertwine with people, but you can never actually walk the same path they're walking because of just being human and the differences in their thinking and yours.
I get a visual of driving down the road, and, you know, there's multiple lanes, and they're in their lane, you're in your lane, but then they went over to the center lane, you went over to the center lane for a little while with the dog training situation, and then you went back to your own lanes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, got to ask, did you overall detect a sense of humbleness, regret from many of these people in prison?
Yeah. There's a lot of regret from these people in prison, a lot of them. There was one guy, I'll never forget him. He was in there for murder, and one of the cardinal rules of prison is you don't ask a prisoner unless they want to talk about it, what they're in there for. That's just a cardinal rule. You don't discuss it. And he came up to me one day, and, you know, we were talking, and I asked him, because the guy was pretty outgoing, and I said, you know, can I ask what you did? And he goes, well, yeah. He said, you know, the guy ran after me, and he was going to hurt me, so I had to kill him. And I said, well, why was he after you? And he goes, well, I robbed him, and then I ran, and he ran after me to try to catch me. And I said, but you robbed him first. And he goes, yeah, but if he wouldn't have run after me, I wouldn't have had to shoot him. And that's I stood there like, what?
Yeah.
You know, but that's how some of them think. Not all of them. There was somebody else in there, a lifer, who had murdered a woman. And he was very young, and he had taken this woman out and for a date, took her out to a secluded place, and he wanted to know what it was like to kill somebody, shot her in the back of the head.
Wow.
And I said, would you do that today? And he goes, absolutely not. He said, today I would want a loving wife and kids, and I'll never get it. And he did this at 23, and he'd been in prison 10 years already, and he had the rest of his life to go. So,
you know what, Shirley? As horrible as that is, my heart hurt when you just said that.
Yeah. Because in that one moment, he destroyed his life.
Yep. But he realizes what his life could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's, you know, there is regret in prison. When you meet the right people, there are. Yeah.
Sure.
Some of them don't, but yeah. And like I say, you know, they're all on their path, and they all know what they did. And, you know, some of them take responsibility for it, and some of them don't. But in real life, everybody needs to take responsibility for not only their thoughts, but their words, their actions. Only you have responsibility for your stuff. You know, when people say, well, somebody else made me do it. No, they didn't. That's where free will comes in. You can stop anything by anybody else just by having free will.
In that moment where that individual was chased after robbing the other person, he could have turned around and said, "Hey, stop. Here's your stuff back. You go your way, I go my way. We be done." That's
right.
That's free will. That's free will. And, we're not there in the whole circumstance of, the heat of the moment. So I'm not judging. I'm just observing. That's all.
Yep.
Well,
there's a difference between judging and the truth and observing, because, you can say, well, somebody was a real bitch today. That might not be judging her, but it might be the truth.
Right. But it's also your interpretation of what a bitch is.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Once again, you said before, when somebody lies, it's out of, is it fear?
It is.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we should all sit with that one for a while, because I'm not condoning anything. I'm not, cutting anybody slack or anything, but it's more of a potential understanding why people do what they do and why they may be dishonest.
Right. And it boils down to fear. There's only two emotions in this whole world, love and fear.
I got to sit with that one too.
Okay, there's two emotions, love and fear. Love comes, that's where we're happy, we're peaceful, we're joyful, we find things that we really like to do, and we're nice to people, and we live in this joyful place. Fear is all the other emotions. It's jealousy, it's envy, it's greed, it's some sort of fear of something. A lot of people even have the fear of success.
Of course. Oh, yeah. And that,
That's huge.
again, that comes from their past, I'm sure, but subconscious potentially, that, they might be thinking, well, and not even know that they're thinking it. Well, if I do hit it big with this opportunity, if I make a lot of money, that's going to change things. People won't look at me the same way. I might not have the same friends, blah, 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 on and on and on. Yeah.
Exactly. And what am I going to bitch about then, too?
Wow. Yeah, there is. Yeah, I can't complain that, I don't have abundance and I can't afford this and I can't afford that. Because what is that? Familiarity. It's comfortable. You're used to it.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's the right thing. I have to tell you, Shirley, you, every time we get together, learn so much. And I've connected with a lot of spiritual people. You're at the top. I mean, with all of this, and things happen for a reason. Your path took you in certain directions. You almost weren't here with us. And that was, I believe, all part of, what happened in your life to get you where you are to help other people. And you do that, through many different ways. Website, super simple to find, Shirley-Scott.com. And this is just a piece of what you offer. Of course, books, CDs, lots of details on that website. You have a children's book as well. But insight, communication with humans, animals. I've learned so much. You've said things that were so accurate, and truly, truly enjoy talking with you. I could go for hours. A cup of coffee, and let's keep going.
Okay. I'll fly back there one of these days, and we'll do that.
You're welcome anytime, and let me see if I can get your way as well.
Okay.
I just got to get a 4-wheel drive vehicle that really can traverse the roads of Oregon.
Exactly.
Thank you for today. We'll catch up soon, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.